First things first, there has been an issue with respect to India and Israel relationship. Now you must be aware about the war that is happening, the conflict that is happening between India and between Israel and Gaza. Now in that particular conflict of Israel and Gaza, what has happened is a number of recruitment drive has taken place. A number of these recruitment drives have taken place from India, whereby we have sent people in form of laborers, in form of skilled low skilled people. So basically we've in this Israeli job scheme we have basically sent a lot of people and for to work in Israel, because it's a lucrative job. They don't have enough labor and we want to send people out. Now, what has happened is that a lot of these people are now sent back because of the fact that Israeli contractors have said that people that you've been sending, the workforce that you've been sending from India to Israel is typically useless, is does not have skills, and also you're sending people who don't even know how to hold a hammer, and you're sending them for construction jobs. So this is a major problem that has come up, and apart from the fact, language is also a problem. So basically what has happened is you are now sending people who are worthless to Israel, and then that has taken a toll on the India Israel relationship. And both the parties are to be blamed, because you have the actual selection happens in a Israeli center in India, and that center is not also run well because of the fact that the faculty which is selecting these workers is they're not working well. So therefore this is a major issue that has happened. Whenever a situation like this happens, you expect a lot of labor surplus countries to export labor, and therefore now what these people are saying, these contractors are saying that we would like to have more people from other places. Now typically see around 500 600 people have already returned home, and apart from that there are two pathways through which people come to Israel. The two pathways is government to government, handled by National Skill Development Corporation, and business to business. And because this government to government has failed, it has also had an impact on National Skill Development Corporation. It has also had an impact on business to business. So that relationship that India has with Israel has taken this bad turn, because of the fact that we have not been able to screen people well before sending them to Israel. So as you can see, the fact that unskilled people, even fruit sellers, rickshaw pullers, have landed up in Israel, and they are expected to work in construction companies, is something that doesn't augur well for India-Israel relationship. So this is the first news that you need to see. The second is GST Council defers the call on health insurance, asks GOM to submit a report. Now you first of all you should be aware about the article 269 subclause A, or 279 subclause A, which talks about the GST Council. Now this GST Council, you should know the representation, that it has representation both from center and all these different states, and the state ministers, the state finance ministers, and then this entire GST Council takes a decision on the basis of the 75% vote. So if you see, the 75% of this GST Council is from the weightage is to the states, and 25% is basically to the center, and any decision that is taken in the GST Council is taken through a 67% agreement between all the parties. So now what has happened is, so this is an example. GST Council is an example of the state center cooperation. But at the same point of time, you should also understand that if a national party is also there in number of states, then it will also have a huge majority in the states as well. Now what has happened is that GST Council had met, and there was a proposal of reducing the insurance and health premiums from 15% to 5%, but this was not done. They had said that okay, we will give this proposal to the group of ministers and for further discussions, and then only we will take it. So one, it's not the point of discovering that what has happened, but what is important is you should know the workings of the GST Council and how the composition of GST Council is something that you should be aware about. So this is another thing that you should be aware of. The third is, after Singapore, US ties up with India to boost semiconductor sector. Now, the Honorable Prime Minister, we've read that last week he was in Brunei, and the second leg of his entire dealing he was in Singapore. And in Singapore, he signed a number of agreements, especially because of the fact that Singapore is a huge hub of these semiconductors and fiber and this thing fabrication of these chips. So because of this because of this AI war that has happened, and then the chip war that is happening, we are also ensuring that we have sufficient supply chain sufficient supply chain of chips. Now all of this, we read through this, that all of this came through after the COVID crisis, because during COVID we realized that the entire world is dependent on China and on Taiwan. Now Taiwan is a major issue here, because you never know when China can attack Taiwan. So because the world is dependent on China and Taiwan for these chips, our supply chain bottlenecks, our supply chains could be very vulnerable, and we want to diversify our supply chains. And therefore all these countries, including US, Europe, India, all these countries are trying to diversify their chip market. US has an agreement, has basically created an act called as Chips Act. Basically this Chips Act of US is outlining that how do we be self-sufficient in making chips, and then also promote their own domestic production of chips. In terms of India, India has its own semiconductor mission. We have all read about this semiconductor mission. We've spent around 76,000 crores. We are spending 76,000 crores on this semiconductor mission. When it was launched in 2021, it's a $10 billion mission. And as a part of this $10 billion mission, we have already set up through the PPP mode. We have already set up these 4 semiconductor factories. Now another factory, by the way, is coming up with Adani, and we'll study about that in the economy page. Now when we talk about this new partnership, India wants to explore with semiconductor supply chain opportunities, and we want to tie up with US for joint ventures and joint initiatives for producing these chips. And the Prime Minister will be there in New York first, and on 21st of September to 24th of September he'll also meet the Quad leadership and the diaspora, and that is where we are talking about that India semiconductor missions and explore opportunities with the global semiconductor ecosystem under International Technology Security Innovation Fund. So read about what is this International Technology Security Innovation Fund, which is created by Chips Act of 2022. Now basically this Chips Act of 2022 of US is dealing with the fact that how can we get rid of China, how can we become independent for creation of these semiconductor chips, and how can we partner with a number of countries for creation of these semiconductor chips. Another thing that you should all know is that semiconductor chips are not an omnibus. There are different kinds of semiconductor chips. For example, we've read about Singapore. Singapore basically deals with 28 nanometer plus semiconductor chips, which are used in electronics and cars and stuff. And then you have these semiconductor chips which are 8 and 9 nanometer semiconductor chips, which are used in mobile phones, miniaturized versions of semiconductor chips, which are really advanced. So you should read about all these different kinds of semiconductor chips. Then Taiwan basically is the front load producer of these extremely critical semiconductor chips that you use in your mobile phones. Then we are going to have this ecosystem with US that we are talking about, and you can read about this particular news. Then the third news is finance rejects agri move for higher incentive to push natural farming. Now we all know about natural farming and the fact that we need I mean most of our products are not taken up by Europeans and by even by American companies, because of the fact that they have high level of pesticides and fertilizers, and therefore and also the fact that these high level of pesticides and fertilizers, what they do is they spoil our soil, as well as the fact that the residues of these also flow back into rivers and lakes, which is also called as which cause something called as eutrophication. If you have not read it in environment, please read what eutrophication is. Now, what has happened is that the finance ministry has basically shot down the agriculture ministry proposal of one-time incentive to of rupees 20,000 rupees per hectare to farmers who adopt natural farming. So we want to move farmers from using these non-natural ingredients to natural ingredients. So to as an incentive, the Shivraj Singh Chauhan led ministry had basically talked about that let's incentivize the farmer by giving him some amount of money, and this I mean this was to be given through the DBT mode, but this has now been rejected by the finance ministry. So you can read about this particular news as well. Now let's move to another news, which is you can also read that nuclear to LNG, India and UAE ink 4 key pacts to expand energy ties. This is another news that you can read. Then yes. Now, one of the most important news is the audacity of the mission. Now, we already know, by the way, the man behind the Swatch Bharat mission is Parmeshwar Iyer, and there is a book that he has written. I would recommend all of you to read his book as part of your ethics and essay strategy as well. Method in Madness. He was an IS officer who quit his job, joined the World Bank, came back to the government, headed the Swachh Bharat mission, and now he's gone back to World Bank. So read about this guy, and his book is it's an excellent book for you to read. Now, what Parmeshwaran Iyer basically says is that we've recently read this news last week that because of the Swachh Bharat mission, if you remember, there's a report by Nature which says that we have saved around 60,000 to 70,000 infant lives and children under 5. Now, why has that happened? Because of the diseases that are spread by the disease that is spread by open defecation. Now, what had happened was that if you talk about communication and communication and information strategy, the government has been really good with respect to Swachh Bharat mission. Now, when the NDA government came to power, more than 60% of and around 550 million people had a habit of defecating in the open. This despite the fact that we had a Swachh Bharat mission or total sanitation campaign that we were running since 1986. It's not written here, but since 1986 we had this program for building toilets and sanitation, but nothing was done because the political leadership was basically not I was not interested, and it had not captured the imagination of the political leadership. Then apart from that, the financing of this particular project was not proper. And then for any particular project like this, because you're trying to change the human behavior, so if you want to change the human behavior, what you need is you also need people's participation as collaborators. It cannot be a top down approach, it has to be a bottom up approach. So remember these 3-4 points. Now all of these 3-4 points were basically wedded into this Swachh Bharat mission, and it was announced on the 15th of August 2014, and it had a 5-year mandate to reduce the open defecation and change the behavior of 550 million by constructing over 100 million toilets. And we did all of that, and we took it by a storm by publicly committing to end this scourge of open defecation, and we took this issue out of the closet. It was a taboo to talk about sanitation. It was a taboo to talk about toilets, and we wanted to talk about fancy things and not toilets. So we took out the taboo out of this particular issue, and then we basically imagined it with scale and speed, and within 5 years we constructed number of millions of this thing. And the best part is it became a Jan Andolan. It became a mass movement, and there were a number of communication strategies from the radio, Man Ki Baat, to basically people celebrating a pride tour. So any particular village which was able to become ODF, open defecation free, it became, I mean, they would have a pride yatra. Also guys, read about what is ODF, ODF plus and ODF plus plus. Now you might be knowing about ODF, but you might not be aware about ODF plus and ODF plus plus. So read about what are these, and basically ODF is just creating the first part. The first part is creating toilets. The second part comes that how do you also link these toilets to the main sewer system. So that is where the local bodies come into play. And then you have the ODS plus plus system, in which you go beyond and you talk about the solid waste management of the entire city. So go to the website of Swatch Bharat Mission, read about all these things, ODF, ODF plus plus and ODF plus. Then apart from that, the Nature, as I told you, the Nature magazine has come up, journal has come up and said that apart from the security and dignity aspects of women, because earlier they had to use they had to go out of homes for nature's call. Now they don't need to do that. So security and safety of women has been ensured. But apart from the fact that because the sanitation ecosystem has improved, therefore the annual savings of the householder also increase, because now people will not fall ill, there will be time savings, and also the fact that the lives that were lost will not be lost now because of this. So there will be less incidents of diarrhea and other diseases. And this is the component that I want you to write down, that for any particular, there was this Delhi Declaration Conference on sanitation, but you can write this down for any particular successful development program. You need these 4 P's to work. The first is political leadership, which was there. Then you have public financing, then you have partnerships and public participation. These 4 things are there. And whenever you're writing an answer, ensure that you also know the SDG goals. So there are these 17 SDG goals. You should memorize all of them, and in one of the answers, I mean, at least in 20-30% of your answers, you can write a line about how this is linked to SDG goal. For example, the sanitation is linked to SDG goal number 6, access to sanitation and water. So read about this article. It's a beautiful article. This is the way that you can also write your essays. This is also the way how you can write about your answers. Then another article, which is one of my favorite articles from today, is the argumentative Indian. Now you might have heard about I mean, some of you might have read Amartya Sen's book, which is called as the Argumentative Indian. Now typically what we hear is that an Indian typically argues about everything and anything. Now what we are trying to say in this particular article is that we have created classrooms in our country where we are creating an atmosphere of conformity which stifles dissent and promotes agreeability. So what we are doing is that in a classroom environment which has no debate, what happens is that I mean the teacher asks the students to basically agree to whatever he or she is saying, and which cuts the idea of learning, because learning comes from 3 major things. Now if you think about any particular particular subject, which is a subject in science, philosophy, or arts. Now, all these subjects are based on the trinity of logic, debate, and storytelling. So you need logic while discussing. You need to debate about issues, and you need a story to basically talk about all of these areas. Now, what has happened is that what we have seen is that teachers are going towards more of silence and less and more of silence and more and lesser of noise in the class. But it is through that noise that we discover, whenever there is this noise, we discover that there is some kind of interaction in the class. Now, let's take the case of most coachings that happen, or most classrooms that you have seen in your own lives. Now, in most classrooms, you might not have had debate. You might not have debated about things. You might not have. It might have been monologues. Like, for example, when I talk about typical coaching institutes, typical coaching institutes are monologue where there is a teacher and there is a student. The student is acquiesced to whatever the teacher says and keeps jotting down whatever is being said by the or regurgitated by the teacher. Now, this is the idea of an argumentative Indian, and this is what is also built in our government, and it is also built in our bureaucracy. So read this. Wait. Now, in the process, we have failed to teach our students this that the silence of agreement, whether it is achieved through bullying or bureaucracy or pedagogic faith, can be noisy, and the kind of noise that they tutor themselves to avoid their interaction with those in power. Such is the architecture that we sit in, that those who agree with us, whether faculty meetings or in parliament. So we typically want to agree. We want to sit with people who agree with us. We don't want to sit with people who do not agree with us. And this is something which we are seeing both in bureaucracy. Also, you don't question. This is how bureaucracy, if you've read about Weber and how the communication happens. Typical bureaucracy, typical way of how bureaucracy works is one way communication. So we are turning into a society from an argumentative Indian. Now we have been coaxed, we have been bullied, and we have been instructed to become an argumentative Indian, which is traditionally not a good thing for India, and it doesn't augur well for the citizens, as well as doesn't augur well for the students as well. So this turns our basically all of us into bhakts and devotees and unpaid employees of people who we must agree with. So whether it's a family or an RWA or the nation, we need to question the status quo. We need to debate on things, so as to have a synthesis of ideas. So this is the article which I really liked, and I really liked the way that she ended the article. In a country where spouses can't often agree on where the wet towel should be kept, it is silly and strenuous to keep playing the argumentative Indian. So as you might have seen that in your household, in my household, everywhere we are always talking about कि गीला towel कहाँ रखना है. We always fight on this particular issue, but at the same point of time, when we talk about other things, we are much more open to be an argumentative Indian than to be an argumentative Indian. So now think why I've done this article, folks. This is not important from a typical UPSC point of view, but the reason that I've done this article is how to write a very engaging answer, how to write a very engaging essay. And whenever you can write and you can come up with a quip, whenever you can come up with a funny kind of an ending, it should not be it should not be a joke, but at this same point of time, it should be a quip. And if you can come up with that shows the highest level of intelligence that a person have, that under this pressure you can also write something like this. So think of the last 3 years essays that have come up, and think of it that if you can come up with something which is different in your answer than everyone else. So read this particular article. Then the next article is the state's blind eye. Now, what has happened in that number of this thing have come up. Number of boards have come up in Uttarakhand, Rudraprayag district, and some of these boards have talked about, written boards have talked about that non-Hindus and Muslims I mean, are being warned for doing any kind of work, any kind of business in this area, and they will face they will face some kind of punitive and legal action. Now, basically this is where the state has basically abdicated its responsibility of rule of law, and this is something which is very difficult to comprehend in a state like Uttarakhand, which has not had a history of typical history of religious and the sectarial divide, but something that has started happening in this particular region. There was initially an issue of love jihad and outsider versus insider in May 2023 because of an issue of love jihad, and then you also I mean, now have an issue of uniform civil code which has been recently passed in the state. So a state which has typically no history of religious fervor is now having this religious fervor. At the same point of time, the state government knows about all of this and not is not taking any action against this. So to keep these fault lines from deepening, the state must act, and it is the duty of the citizen of Uttarakhand to basically ensure that there is rule of law. So read about this. Then the next article is a win-win academy, win-win for academic industry. Now, a couple of years ago, the government had basically announced the National Research Foundation. Now, the National Research Foundation is basically an idea which is coming from the US system. Now, in the US system, and both and all in on all the advanced countries, US, Germany, South Korea, and Israel, you have a lot of funding that is there in the for research and for this fundamental research and for partnership of the public sector with that of the private sector. Now, the US has something called as the National Science Foundation, and it basically creates a system of high risk, cutting edge research which can flourish within the academic institution, and once there is a proof of concept, then the industry can further step in to create the technology. For example, the education institutes can or a research institution can come up with an idea, and once that idea is a proof of concept, then you can take it forward with the help of the industry. Now, the government has set up this Sandhan National Research Foundation with a corpus of 50,000 crore rupees, out of which 14,000 crore rupees will come from the center, and the rest 36,000 crore rupees is to come from the industry and philanthropists. So this is the model which has happened, which has taken place in US, which we are also enabling. And if you remember this year's economic survey, while talking about this year's economic survey, I talked to you about that what we need is a collaboration between the government and the research institutes and the private sector. So we need all these three sectors to come together if we really want our development paradigm to take forward and innovation to take forward. And therefore, although this is also part of NEP, if we want to go towards Viksit Bharat, we need all these three players to fire together. And the one of the major problems is our investment in R&D. Our investment in R&D is less than 1% of our GDP. It's around 0.6% of our GDP, which needs to increase. And if you see countries like Israel, which spends around 5%, China spends around 2 to 3% of their GDP on R&D. So something like this we need to do, and again we need to do this private areas needs to come up, and this funding and this entire innovation should not happen only in the IITs and the IIMs, which is the top 1% of the student population, but the middle institution, the state-led institution, the state-led universities and all of that. And this, along with the 1 lakh crore rupees corpus that has been created in this year's budget for deep tech startups and all these research institutes, will complement each other to for India to become a knowledge-driven economy. So read about this article. It's a good article. Then let's come to the next important thing. Yeah, first is this. why apex court has intervened in the Himachal Pradesh collegium decision. Now you should be aware of the first judges, the collegium system of India. Now this is a part of your judiciary chapter of Lakshmikant. I'm going to give you a small revision of this. Now the collegium system was basically a system for appointment and transfer of judges of High Court and Supreme Court, and it was laid down by the 9 judge bench of the Supreme Court, which is also called as the Supreme Court Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association versus the Union of India. This is also known as the second judge case. So you should be aware of the first judge case, the second judge case, and then the third judge case. In 1998, what had happened was, so basically for making any kind of appointments to the courts, the appointments and the transfer of judges will be through the judges themselves. The executive will not have any role in this. This was the second judge case, and in the third judge case, the court had basically said that how the collegium system would actually function. Now for appointment of there was a memorandum of agreement between the center and the state, the memorandum of procedure. Now what happens in case of the appointment to the state higher judiciary, so basically the high courts, there is a collegium that is formed. The chief justice of the high court along with 2 senior judges of the high court basically form a committee. This is the collegium at the high court level. They recommend names to the Supreme Court collegium, which then decides about the status of this particular whatever has been recommended by the collegium of the high court. Now what has happened is that in 2022 there were 2 names that were recommended of district judges to be were to be elevated to the judgeship of the high court. Now these names were sent for reconsideration by the Supreme Court collegium and sent back to the chief justice of this high court. Now then again there were 2 more names that were taken up in 2024, and these names in 2024 were not the same names that were there in 2022. So now the issue has come up that should the initial 2 people who were the senior most should have been elevated first or not. Now here it was found out that only while considering the names of sending people's name for higher judiciary, only the chief justice of the high court was the decision was taken by the chief justice of high court, and the two most senior judges, their opinion was not taken, and therefore the opinion of the chief justice of the high court is not equal to the opinion of the collegium of the high court, and therefore this is an issue. It should be an effective consultation among the 3 constitutional functionaries, the chief justice, the two most senior companion judges. So this will give you a lot of clarity about the appointment of judges, especially at the high court level. So read about this. Then the next article, vaccines for mpox. Now mpox, recently we have also found a case in India of mpox. Now we have already talked about clad 1A, clad 1B and clad 2. So there are different clads, there are different basically classes of mpox, monkeypox, and this has become a global health emergency. Last month the WHO had basically talked about this. It has spread to a number of countries in Africa, and we are now seeing cases cropping up in different parts of the world as well, including that of India. We found 1 case day before yesterday. Now they share a common ancestor, which is basically a monkey, and now typically we were seeing only clad 1 cases. Now clad 1A is basically where you have this monkeypox between animals only, but 1B is transmitting more between people than previously anticipated through sexual activity, and 1A basically comes from animals. Now we've also developed vaccines. Now typically it is both mpox and smallpox have same family of viruses, and but at the same point of time mpox is less severe and has lower fatality, but is spreading much more faster than the smallpox. Now we've had a number of companies which are developing vaccines for it, but the problem is that the cost of vaccines is very high, and therefore you need WHO to sanction more number of vaccines. And then you should also be aware of a Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization, Gavi. Gavi is a vaccine alliance project. Now read about what Gavi is. And Gavi and UNICEF cannot buy these vaccines unless WHO issues emergency use of listing of products, which is fully approved by them. And WHO is basically saying that until unless we get paperwork from all these pharmaceutical companies, we cannot sanction these vaccines. For example, the COVID vaccines was sanctioned by WHO, and therefore it was given to us. So this is something that needs to happen. And if you've met a infected person, or if you've gone to these areas, you should be vaccinated. Then the next idea is, this next article is Saktan Thampuran and his importance to Thrissur. Now Raja Rama Varma or Raja Rama Varma 9, who's also known as Saktan Thampuran. Now he was basically the king of he was the ruler of Cochin Kingdom from 1719 to 1905. And by the way, the name basically means powerful emperor. It comes from the Sanskrit this thing dictionary. And his name is important, and his work is important because of the fact that he when he came to power, he had orchestrated, basically you had this Travancore kingdom, and you had this Cochin as a small part of it. And what he did was he freed Cochin from the alliance to the Mysore, and then he formalized the relationship independent relationship with British as well as with East India Company. And it also ended the institutions of this spiritual leaders who conspired against the Cochin king, against the Calcut Zomeron. So he had largely freed his kingdom of crime. He had also improved trade relationship, and he had also basically taken out his kingdom from the Mysore kinship as well. And that is where he's known. And he also started the Thrissur Puram in 1797 as an alternative to the largest temple festival in the state. So read about the workings of this particular king. Is an important person coming from Kerala. So part of your art and culture. Then apart from that, the next article is copper mining stalls and import surge, players eye overseas assets. Now what has happened is that typically you should be aware of the fact that we have limited amount of copper reserves with us. Now the way that copper reserves are done is that you have this supply chain of copper, where you have copper concentrate which is melted into copper anode, and then it is then refined into copper cathode or refined copper, which is used in rods, sheets, wires, and all these inputs. Now what has happened is that our imports have doubled, because see, anything that you want to do in electric, for example, you want electric vehicles, you want more of batteries, anything that you want to do in the current area, maybe even in clean energy, all of them require a critical mineral copper, which goes into wires and everything that you need to do. But at the same point of time, we have not been able to secure our supply chain of copper, because we are not able to produce much of copper. Now we do have some amount of copper with us, which is mostly low grade. So we have 208 million ton of low grade copper with us. But at the same point of time, we need to also extensively explore more resources and into reserves. So what happens is that we might not even know that we have copper or not. So for that, we have this National Mineral Trust, Exploration Trust, under the ministry, the Mines Ministry, which basically goes into exploration of different kinds of these materials. Just like we've talked about that we have lithium in the Raisi district of Jammu. Similarly, we need to explore that where all we have copper mining systems that we can explore. But the exploration, there has been a lag, and also auctions have not taken place. And whenever auction has taken place, there has not been too much of investor enthusiasm there. And therefore what has happened is that that our own domestic producers have gone to engage with copper rich countries like Zambia, Democratic Republic of Congo, or Chile, where copper reserves are basically available, and our domestic manufacturers have now started going for joint ventures or buying these basic companies for, so that we can secure our copper supplies. Even go to places like Mongolia. So read about all this particular news. Then, despite Maharashtra not no official communication between Tower and Adani Group on chip partnership, we've already had these 4 chip partnership. This was the 5th chip partnership that we were thinking about. The Tower, which is an Israeli company, and Adani Group, to make these chips in India, semiconductor chips in India, which was supposed to happen in Maharashtra, which has not happened till now. Then the last news of the day: government dissolves the standing committee on statistics. Now, one of the major issues is again, by the way, a professor of mine, Pranab said. Now, this is an issue that India has not been publishing its statistics. Now, there are 2-3 major statistics that are very important. One is the economic the census. The last census that happened was in 2011. Nothing has happened till now. Then we have the economic census and the household survey, which are unreliable. So from the data of consumption to data of poverty, all these, I mean, think of any particular data set that you want to deal within the country, and you want to talk about anything. You need these data sets, and if these data sets are not reliable, if you do not have sufficient amount of data, how will you do policy making on that? So therefore, number of members had raised this concern, but now the government, without even informing the committee, has now basically removed this 14-member committee, which is the Standing Committee on Statistics, and now it has set up a new committee headed by the National Statistic Commission chairperson Rajiv Lakshman Khandekar, and it has 4 members, and now they are going to revise the way of conducting all of these surveys. So another article that you need to read. Good news for most of us. iPhone 16 has been launched with Apple Intelligence on the device. Maybe you can read about what all new things have come up, and if you have the deep pockets to buy these new phones. Then coming to the previous day's articles, folks, there are 2 important articles that I want you to read. One is the use of AI in warfare, because there are a number of things that are coming up. This is a part of your internal security as well as in general. Now, there is this global summit on responsible use of AI, which has started in Seoul recently. This is the second summit, guys. The first summit had already taken in Belgium or in Brussels last year, and basically why this is important is because of the summit is called as a responsible use of artificial intelligence in military domain. Now we have we have a number of issues. We are right now having 2 wars in front of us, Gaza and the Ukraine war, and in both these wars there are autonomous weapons that are being used, that are there. So basically both these wars have become testing grounds for using of artificial intelligence in warfare, and what we need is that we need to have some kind of a base mechanism where we need to see that we cannot say that we are not going to use AI in wars, but at the same point of time all countries should come together to ensure that AI doesn't take over. We still having a human interface in these whatever conflicts that we are having, and this is the process. It started from Hague last year, and you have something called as lethal autonomous vehicle systems laws. Even the United Nations had taken up in 2019 in Geneva, and you should be aware of this, and the focus should be on the responsible use. You cannot say that that we will go behind the clock and we'll turn back the clock and not use AI in militaries. All the countries are going to use it. China is going to use it, India is going to use it, the world is going to use it, but the idea is to make it a responsible use of AI and have a partnership, or we should have a responsible AI system at national, bilateral, plurilateral and multilateral level. So read about this. And the second important most article from yesterday I want you to read is India generates the highest plastic pollution in the world. in terms of that, we burn around 5.8 million tons of plastic, which releases 3.5 million tons of environment into the environment as debris. And this is huge. And next in number is basically Nigeria, Indonesia. So we produce the highest number, and we have a huge number of unmanaged waste that we see polluting the entire planet. But at the same point of time, there is this north versus south divide. The open burning is the predominant form of plastic pollution in the global south. And but at the same point of time, what we see is that 70% of world plastic pollution comes from the 20 major countries, and none of which are high income countries. These are basically coming from low income and medium income countries. But at the same point of time, you need technology from the north to basically cut down on all of this. So read about this particular article. It's an important article from your science and tech point of view. Then apart from that, there are one more article that I want you to read: 5 Sutras for digital infrastructure. Now India is building this infrastructure of DPIs. We have talked about DPIs, digital public infrastructures, and there are 5 things that needs to happen for developing a citizen stack or a good DPI. One is the citizen's relationship with market and with state. The other is securing the data of the citizens and privacy concerns. The third is not to create monopolies. One of the major areas is that you need DPS so that you don't have Amazons and Flipkarts which control the market structure. So you need DPS there, and then you need techno legal regulations which combine public technology and law to govern ethical use of this technology. And then public private partnership needs to be happen for this technology to work forward. So these are 5 basic characteristics that any good DPI should have. You should be aware about this. So these are the articles that I want you to read from yesterday's newspaper. The 3 articles that I told you that are very important, and then you can read today's newspaper. So with this, we wind up our session today, and I will see you tomorrow morning at the same time, folks. Thank you very much. Bye bye.